Welcome, everyone. I am so excited that you're here with us this morning or this evening if you're in the UK or wherever you are for this conversation about healing the healers with my wonderful friend and colleague, Sharon Volner. Sharon, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, TJ.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy and excited about this conversation. And it's one that seems really important. And honestly, I've been having these conversations in so many ways. And that conversation is, what does it mean to heal the healers? And I know you've worked in behavioral health for some time. I'm guessing a lot of people who are watching right now know you. But let's just start with just an introduction about you, your work, and what is your passion for doing this work in behavioral health?
Thank you. My passion is helping people come through the other side. I think that we're all just human beings. As Ram Dass says, we're all just taking each other home. Um, and there's another really great quote by David Henry Thoreau who talked about like we're all in desperation. We're all in silence and desperation. Like we're just people. And I'm not that unique. We all have stories and we all have struggles, and it's nice that there's other people that believe in us to get through the other side. So that's my biggest passion, especially being a clinician, is helping people learn their reality, live in reality, cope with reality, and find resilience in reality.
Wow, it's so interesting, Sharon. This is the second time in 24 hours that someone has brought up that Ram Dass quote and Thoreau in the same sentence. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
that's fascinating. I'm going to dig in a little bit and just see
yeah.
what's there. I know that we are both very passionate about helping people doing their own healing, but also the importance of those of us who work in behavioral health or who are healers of any type, the importance of also doing our own healing. I know you know that my platform is really about helping clinicians stay focused on who and what they are so that they can actually be a presence for another person's healing rather than thinking this is a broken person sitting in front of me and my job is to fix them. And so I'm wondering if we can kind of start with what is the difference there and how effective is it? And of course, this is a leading question, but how effective is it to think if someone is broken and my job is to fix them? And what is different about the overused and yet very important phrase holding space?
Oh, wow. I love those questions. I personally don't believe that people are broken. We may have broken patterns, but some people do come into this field and view others as broken, as sometimes using their language because people view themselves as broken. So I could see how people do that. Um, I I don't believe anyone is broken. I believe broken patterns is what we have, and if we can recognize them and change some of the patterns, everything can change. Um, and I love holding space. We've talked about this one before. Holding space, being in the presence of someone that feels safe enough to open up, to share their vulnerabilities, to be seen, and talk about their pain with somebody else is a very healing opportunity.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it really is the power of presence and simply witnessing someone is so much more powerful than, I think as clinicians, we have a lot of ideas of like what interventions we might use and what modality I might use, or maybe even we're diagnosing someone while they're
yeah,
talking. And there's a place for all of that. And
right.
yet, this place of absolute presence where I'm simply being a witness to someone's transformation, I think is not only powerful for the client, but also for the clinician in terms of the energy that we bring to the work. And do I feel, at the end of the day, do I feel depleted or do I feel energized? Most of the time, I feel a little bit of a combination of both, but I always want to check in with myself and ask myself, what's the depletion about and what's that being energized about?
Yeah, that is really important because I think sometimes we just leave the session or leave the work and then jump into one more thing and not have that opportunity to practice looking at ourselves and saying, where's my resilience and where's my depletion at? And that definitely contributes to wounded healers and vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue and burnout. And it's just too much. And that's where healers, we need to look at ourselves and say, okay, where am I in this? Because anytime we bear witness to someone's suffering, we take a piece of their story with us. We don't just hear it, process it, do that thing. We take it with us. We put it in our invisible backpack, and that carries such a toll. I just last week gave a presentation about vicarious trauma, and that's the example that I use. And I started off with a story of, a few times a year I backpack. I love going to Yosemite and Mammoth and all these wonderful places because there's something amazing that happens at 10,000 feet elevation. No Wi-Fi, no reception, no work, and it's just you and nature and a sky full of stars and beautiful lakes and waterfalls that you've never imagined. And that is pure self-care. But I carry this big 35-pound backpack. Now I can put it down as I trek along, but in our work, we can't just put it down. When we're bearing witness to people's stories and we take a piece and we put it in our backpack, we're now carrying that with us. And if we have our own stuff that we're carrying on top of other people's stuff, that is, if not properly managed, it's going to crush us. So we have to be able to protect ourselves as we care and sit in space with others. And there's a really beautiful thing about sitting with someone and holding space because there's no judgment. It's recognizing that we're just people. I'm a few decisions away from what you're doing. I'm a few feelings away. I'm a few thoughts away. We're not that different. So
I love that. And there's a
yeah.
couple of things you said that I want to lean into. One is the idea, because I think some of us have been trained, and this might be a little bit more of an old school thought, but I hear that people are still being trained this way. So I'm going to put voice to it, that we just leave ourselves at the door. Like we leave our stuff at the door and it'll be waiting for us when we'll finish like our shift. Let's say we're working at
Yes.
treatment or we're working in private practice. And I think that is such a disservice to a person as a human being, not just as a clinician, but like the message, subtle or not so subtle, is like, don't actually be fully present in the room and be human. And I hear a lot of people saying that, like, I'm an empath, so I take on the energy, so I'm going to protect myself from the energy. But I want to offer a different possibility that you're pointing to as well. And that is, if I'm actually fully in the room and I'm open and available, yes, I will absorb some of it, but there's a place within me that can handle that, right? There's a place within me. And I think the reason, and I thought there was a finish line to healing, and I thought it would have been a long time ago. Let's put it that way. I realized there's no finish line, but I also realized, that the more of my own work that I've done, because you said something that I think is so important. You didn't exactly say it, but this is what I heard. When I feel broken, I see my clients as broken. And when because we hear hurt people. But healed people also heal people, and not exactly true. Healed people hold a space for someone to do their healing without trying to interrupt it, without trying to view them as broken. And quantum mechanics is now showing us that the observer has a profound effect. So if I'm looking at the person in front of me as a problem or a broken human, not only are they going to feel that, but I'm going to feel it at the end of the day. So I actually think and this, for some, this might sound really controversial, but I want to take the energetic boundary down. I don't want to have this wall between me and the person I'm sitting in front of. And what it requires, and I want to be clear, is that I need to be grounded. And for myself, I call it spirit. Some might not, but grounded in the essence of who I am. Me, the individual human, is not taking on someone's stuff. I want to be clear. But when I'm holding and able to be a witness to, they may have never been seen that way, but I do absorb some of it. I remember when I worked at Altamira in Sausalito, I took the ferry to work every day. And part of the reason I took the ferry to work from San Francisco is I wanted that decompression. And I had this little corner of the ferry. I found this little place I could stand on the rail. And if I needed to cry, I could cry. The water was splashing. No one knew I was crying. Not that it matters if anyone saw me crying, but I would just release what needed to be released. And I think there's something really powerful in that process.
Yeah. So yes, academia still teaches leave your stuff at the door. And the reason is, and it actually doesn't happen. It's a nice concept.
Right.
But if we can envision I'm leaving myself at the door, then I'm not in session saying, oh yeah, that happened to me too. And here's how I dealt with it. And now the session turns into you. And now you're so into yourself, you're not even focused on the client. So I do believe initially, yes, leave yourself at the door. But the truth is nobody actually leaves themselves at the door. We can't disconnect from ourselves in a room. When someone is saying something that is sparking a feeling, I'm not going to go, nope, 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 nope. I'm going to boundary myself up and protect my peace. If you have to protect your peace, it means you never really had it. So a lot of doing our inner work is what's going to make us more capable to sit in the presence of someone, and not everyone is capable of that. Some of us come into the field because we don't want to look at ourselves. So I'm gonna not
Mhm.
going to look at me. I'm just going to fix you, because I'm a lot of work. Um, so it's really, I love what you're saying, because it speaks to, we have to be able to do our own work. We have to ground ourselves in the room and be present. And we can acknowledge and go, okay, I can relate to that, but I'm not going to lean in and jump in and use me as the intervention and my experience. I am going to look at the different therapeutic modalities, but also just getting down and having that human connection. And that's unconditional positive regard. I'm just
That's
one
right.
person sitting in front of you. And
That's
if
right.
I can ground myself and tune out my voices in my head, then I can sit and be present with you and let you know, as you say, you are whole and perfect. And we had some brilliant strategies that we need to relook at. So I love your terminology and I frequently use it,
Thanks.
um, because it's true and it's relatable.
You know, you just gave one of the best and most nuanced descriptions of the both and of, yes, we leave ourselves at the door in some ways, but we also understand that we bring our full selves into the room and
Yeah.
the importance of each of them. And I love the way you framed it. And I speak a lot as you do, and I love when people come up after and say, I love when you said this. And I'm like, I never said that. So this is what I heard you say, Sharon. I have no idea if you just said this, but this sort of it is sort of like a seeming paradox. It's like, I don't make it about me. I think that's really important to name. And I think that's why what you're saying is that's why the educational piece is leave yourself at the door, because people will sometimes hear when I say take down the energetic boundary that means they're going to just self-disclose all over the place. Only 10% of communication is verbal, unless you're in a forum like this, and we are doing way more than that. But 90% of communication is nonverbal, and yet we find ourselves in this discussion over and over and over again. Do I self-disclose or not? And it's not really about that. I tend toward very little self-disclosure with a client, but energetically, I want to be fully present. And I love the way you framed it. I'm going to go back and listen to the way you said it, because I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's
Right.
both and, as it often
Right.
is. Now, let's dive a little more deeply into one thing that you said that I think is so prevalent. You might even call it a pandemic. Do you like that? In our field, and that is people jumping into this field in the midst of doing their own trauma healing, which let's just normalize that. No one comes to this field without trauma, because we have the call, because we want to either help people heal what we've healed, or, as you said, the shadow aspect of that is, I'd rather just fix someone than look at myself. And so let's talk more about the balance of that, and how do we, as now we've been in the field for a while, right? We're the people who get to mentor now. How do we help someone who's, maybe, let's say if it's addiction treatment, that they're, 9 months sober and they dove into the field. How do we help someone navigate that? And let's dive a little more deeply into it, because I think this is really important.
Yes, I believe we all need to do our work, whether we're 9 months in, 20 years in, we're never done. As you said, there is no finish line. There's this illusion of a finish line, but there is no finish line. We are constantly evolving, we are constantly developing. Life continues to show up, stuff continues to show up, and we need to be able to carry it and do our work. And that is it's a tough one. And for a lot of people, when they're newly abstinent, sober, and clean in the field, they're like, I've seen a light, I'm going to go help others. But wait, have you done your work, or have you just eliminated one piece, which you refer to as a brilliant strategy, using and abusing? So I'm going to use that word. So you've removed a brilliant strategy with sobriety, but there's still so much to uncover. And are we looking at that? Because otherwise, it's going to come up. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And
That's
none
right.
of us, I believe, no matter how long we've been in the field, we're never immune, where
That's right.
there's never like this badge of honor of I'm done. Um, I've lived quite a fun, long life, and tomorrow's my birthday, so apparently
Oh,
it's a
happy
little longer life.
birthday.
Um,
Yay.
but we're stuff still shows up, and I go, ooh, you're still here. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Didn't know. And then I make some, passive, humorous comment about it. And I go, I guess I need some more work in that area and recognizing that. So continuing to do our work. And I think that's how we can mentor others is
Yeah.
not being ashamed to do our work, not being embarrassed to say, I'm in therapy
Yeah.
versus, oh, I already worked on that. I already worked through my trauma. Like, but did we? Because it always shows up. It just
Yeah.
shows up differently.
That's right. Yeah, I'm not the healer and I'm healing the broken one, right? Pema Chodron says compassion is not a relationship between the broken and the healer or the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between two equals. And that really is when I'm looking at someone as an it instead of a thou. I have this process called I, it, I, thou, where I invite people to be in dyads, basically just like they're in a session. And the only instruction is to look at this person and view them as an it being a role, like you're the client, you're the broken one, you're the patient, right? I'm the healed one, I'm the expert. And if I ever think I'm the expert, I mean, it's a fun place to be, right? I think I know something, and then something happens and I go, oh wow, what I know is not all there is to know. And I have a whole thing on triggers. I think triggers are wonderful. I know that it's not popular to say that now. We have the trigger warning, right? And the reason I say that is when something gets activated, which is the word I use instead of triggered, it's because something's wanting to heal. And when I'm working with people who are new to the field, as you said, it's not if there's going to be something that someone says that touches something within me, it's when. I'm not processing that out loud with my client, but what I am doing is tending to this. And that's what we're really talking about. And the this I'm talking about is doing some of that deeper. And it's really inner child work,
Mhm.
because it's like my 7-year-old just got touched. I remember, and for me, it's rarely been clients. It's almost always been coworkers working in treatment. It's like there was this one therapist, and oh my gosh, pushed every mom button. Like she was reminded me so much of my mom and her presentation and her communication style, also known as passive aggressive. And I'm like, oh, I have a judgment. Look at that. I am judging this human, and judgment, be it whatever it is, prevents connection. It's not bad or wrong. My mind is always judging. But if I'm unaware of it, then I'm projecting and saying she needs to not be passive aggressive, which, by the way, is exactly what my mind was doing. And then I said, oh, wait, the deeper work is like, I know something's getting touched. That's not a negative. That's a beautiful thing because this human is here and I get to grow through this and heal not only my relationship with this therapist, but also that 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and 8-year-old who became very afraid and shut down because that was my pattern. I numb out and shut down. So I love that. I love that we're having the conversation. I think it's important.
I love that. And I share the same thought with you is it's not a popular one, but if it triggers you, it's for you. Run
Right.
towards the trigger.
That's right.
Here's an opportunity for growth. And I find myself also when I'm activated, I look at it and go, oh, here's an opportunity to do some work because I love to be able to do the work. It's hard, but then you do get to grow and then you get to see the world a little differently. And it is a beautiful thing. And then you can kind of pass it down and teach it to others, not from a it, thou, I, thou perspective, but from, hey, I learned something and I'm so excited to share it with you because this might help.
Yeah, and what I also love is that in real time, again, I'm not verbalizing this. I'm not saying to the client like, "Oh, something just got touched in me, so I'm going to pause for a moment and do some of my, regulation we call it." But really it's self-care in the truest sense of the word. I'm going to care for that wound. I'm going to honor it. If it's parts work, we're going to say there's a part of me that just got touched and I'm going to now do that soothing. But really, energetically, the person sitting in front of me is aware, right? The clients who have trauma, which are all of them, because planet Earth, we have traumatic experiences. I'm not a big fan, as you know, Sharon, of the big T, little t framework because someone can have something for one that's so insignificant, but is just monumentous for another person.
Right.
So when I'm tending to myself, there's an energy. And that person sitting in front of me, whether they're consciously aware of it or not, is like, oh, this person is staying present. Something's in the room. I'm feeling it because our clients who have trauma are very aware of who is safe. You used that word earlier, so let's dive in. What actually does create true safety? And while you're answering that, I'm going to look to see if anyone has any comments on Facebook, and we'll
Okay.
answer some questions.
Yeah. Safety is it's a space where you can feel no judgment, where you can feel that you can kind of share anything and you will be heard without judgment. That's safety to me. And if we as practitioners can create a sense of safety, our clients will heal from that. I think it's Brene Brown that talks about when trauma is shared in a space of compassion, that's where healing happens, where someone is present with you and they're hearing you. Because we also have that is, our job is very isolating. It's not like we can go home and talk about what happened at work. There's
That's right.
confidentiality. Can't really talk about, there was a suicide attempt today at work, somebody who relapsed. And like, that's not a happy party conversation or a dinner conversation,
Right.
or an appropriate conversation because of HIPAA.
Yeah.
So we have isolation in ourselves. And so when a client comes to us and says, I've never been able to share this, and I'm so glad I can share this with you, and we can hold space for them. That is amazing. And then to avoid burnout and vicarious trauma, we as healers need to have that kind of safe space for us as well. So just took that a
And
little further.
no, I love it because I think there's a couple of things you're saying that are so important. And then I'm going to read a couple of comments after that.
Sure.
Because we do have people watching. Thank you everyone for watching. Drop questions in for Sharon and or for me, but we'll definitely address them. I I think true self-care is actually the safety that we're talking about. Because when, yes, it is important, and I'll bookmark that we find places and spaces to do that for ourselves. Even in the midst of our work, though, when I'm truly present and available, that's because how do we heal shame, right? Shame is so pervasive for anyone who has an addiction or anyone who has a mental health concern. There's some degree of shame underneath that, in my experience. And perhaps all humans have shame. I don't think it's necessarily a negative or a bad thing, but shame can help. We might feel stuck, right? I think of shame as like swimming in oatmeal. That's the best definition I can come up with. It's like I'm stuck. I'm trying to get out. But shame, and we'll use Brene Brown again. She says the three things are secrecy, silence, and judgment that keeps shame alive, or cause it to grow in the petri dish. She says, which I love. So the opposite of that is how we heal it. And as healers, we are holding the space for someone to bring that to the surface, not digging for it or helping them. We're not pulling them out of the oatmeal. We're
No.
saying, hey, you're in the oatmeal right now. Let's talk about that. The opposite of secrecy, silence, and judgment is what? Curiosity, openness, vulnerability, authenticity. So when we create those spaces, there's a dual effect that happens. One, obviously, it's great for the client, right? You named it. They maybe for the first time. I remember the first time I was truly seen. I truly remember it. I had a teacher in high school that saw me and it changed my life. Early sobriety, I had a mentor, Mary Helen. I talk about her all the time. She saw something in me that I had lost access to. That is so healing. But for the quote unquote healer or the clinician, that's also true self care because when I'm truly present and available, work can be energizing. There's this story, and it's a little derogatory toward therapists, and I don't mean it to be, but I think it's a funny story that but there's a story of a spiritual practitioner and a therapist who shared office space. And in the evenings, they'd ride the elevator down. And the therapist said, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. I had 9 clients today. And the spiritual practitioner said, oh my gosh, I'm so energized. I had 9 clients today. And I don't mean that to be snarky. It's just how am I showing up in the room? Am I
Right.
showing up playing a role as the therapist or the clinician, or am I really spiritually present and open? Um, let's go to a couple of these comments. Of course, thank you, Debbie. Amazing talk. She says, Kimberly Ferguson says, ditto, responding to pause, identify the feeling allows me to acknowledge I am safe right here, right now. Gwen, of course, has great things. Just love you both. We love you too and grateful for this space and combo. Um, okay. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If there are any specific questions, specifically or especially for Sharon, drop them in there and I'll check again in about 15 minutes. What's present now for you?
I just love being able to have this conversation. I know that you and I have had various conversations in the past, getting to know each other, but it's so nice to to know how you think and how you feel, and just the fact I really respect and appreciate that you're bringing up these conversations. And the specific guests that you have on, and the conversations that you're having that may or may not be taboo, and it talk about safety. It's so nice to talk about everything. It's so nice to talk about, like, yeah, healers, we do get wounded. Yeah, we are not
Yeah.
always on our A game, and it's okay. And there shouldn't be a judgment. In fact, if we call ourselves healers in this field, we should be the first to say, I'm not okay today. I'm
That's right.
having a hard time. And here's how I take care of it. Like role modeling, kind of like parents. Like I remember, because I'm a mom, growing up thinking that I needed to be perfect. I needed to not show anger. Once in a while, it's okay for a parent to lose their shit.
That's
However, not the most therapeutic moments of my life. And I remember
right.
thinking I needed to have this like sense of control and role model, and look at how hard I work, and look how hard I parent, and look how hard I. And then one day my daughter says to me, I could just never be you. You're so perfect. And I thought, oh my gosh, no, no, I'm so not perfect. I've been
Yeah.
role modeling the wrong image. I need to show
Interesting.
her that it's okay to be angry, but then what do I do with my anger? It's
That's right.
okay to be sad, but what do I do with my sadness? It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to not just kind of like walking around with this filter,
Well,
because I wasn't doing it right. And so I try to be my best human self. Mommy had a bad day. Mommy's having a great day. And here's mommy had a bad day, and I'm going to take it out on the gym, not take it out on you or the people around me. So it's really interesting. And this wasn't that long ago, but we're forever learning and forever growing. And so to continue to be close to authentic and human and transparent everywhere is really where it's at, I think.
oh my gosh, yes. My mind, there's always, I see pathways. I always see paths when I'm having these conversations. Oh, there's this different pathways. I'm going to choose this one, even though I see
Do it.
there's these other two. But the one I want to go down is a little bit of a darker path. We're going to go into the shadow a little bit. There have been some deaths of people in our field lately. And I think sometimes we get into this field, and I'll just say but I see it very prevalent. I might get into this field and then not feel like it's okay for me to say I'm struggling or I'm hurting. And where do I go for that? I do get calls and texts saying, hey, my partner needs to go to treatment, but I don't want anyone to know, right?
Right.
I need to go to mental health treatment. One of my good friends said, I need mental health treatment, but I don't really want our field to know that I'm needing that. And I would love for us to be able to normalize that more. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the person not wanting everyone to know, but it's interesting to me that we work in a field where we acknowledge that people need to heal, and there's always a deeper level, and there's always more. And at any given moment, you might be the person who's going through it, and I might be able the person that can hold space. And then 2 days from now, we reverse that.
Yeah.
So to be able to bring that into the light, because if I tell you what's really happening, maybe you're not going to refer to me, or maybe you're not going to see me. Um, someone, and I'm gonna be really transparent for a moment. Someone reached out to me and said, because you built your career on your reputation, and I had to sit with that for a moment. And I responded, I know that you're meaning well by that, but I have not built my career on my reputation. I built my career on a dedication to helping the person right in front of me and getting people the help that they need, regardless of if that's me or an organization I'm connected with or somewhere else. And perhaps that is reputation, but I think about Rumi. Rumi's quote was like, be notorious and destroy your reputation. And I love that quote because, like, I'm not doing this so people think I'm a great person. That's not what I
Right.
want to do. I want to do this. I think about Shannon Clay. I mention her all the time. She's one of my favorite people in the field because she's like, I don't care who I'm working for. If this person needs to go treatment somewhere else, I'm going to do that.
Right.
So I'm curious in that conversation because I know that was a lot I just said. What's present for you with that?
It reminds me of a friend of mine who was in like the business world and lived in a single apartment, really struggled with rent, but drove like the fanciest, newest Beamer. And I'm like, what is with this BMW that you're killing yourself to pay for? he says, well, when I show up like this to meet my clients, they're going to trust me because it looks good and it looks like I'm successful and they're going to trust me. And that's how they're going to work with me. And I thought, okay, I don't know much about the business world, but I imagine there's some truth to that. Image is important in this field. Yeah, maybe image is important to a certain degree, but if I know that someone has the ability to talk about their struggle, be open about it, and then share, and not with everybody on social media. I don't believe social media is a journal that we should write as a diary. But like if someone is that I'm close to calls me and says, hey, I'm really struggling, blah, 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 and you know, we're hurting for clients too, I'm going to be more wanting to help.
That's right.
One, because there's a need, but two, I know that you care and you can connect.
Yeah.
So real people doing the work, like, isn't that why we got into this field? Because we all had a story, we had a calling, and at some point, somehow it got competitive. I don't know why. We have so many people struggling in the world. We have so many wonderful places to refer to. There's plenty of everything to go around. There's no need to poach staff, clients, or anything. Like, if we can all work together to inform the community and society that we are destigmatizing addiction and mental health, I think that will grow all businesses. But it starts with us. If we're going to be the healers in the community, the mentors in the community, we need to talk about, like, sometimes it's not all peachy. Sometimes I don't always have good days. Sometimes I'm going through stuff. And yeah, I've gotten those calls too. My loved one is struggling. I'm struggling. I don't want anyone to know that I'm here. I have a business to keep up. I have a reputation to uphold. But aren't we just human at the end of the day? Like, really, aren't we just human?
And you did something that's so important, like that actually builds that trust because someone who's willing to be vulnerable and authentic and share, not just when they're going through a difficult time, but
Right.
just be authentic, be
Yeah.
transparent, right? And you and I have had moments like that where we just get to see each other. And sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't even need to be spoken. It's just there's a trust. There's a trust that gets built through someone being fully present in their bodies.
Yeah.
And there's something about that that I think actually, because I think as an industry, my invitation for people is to ask this fundamental question. Do you want to lean toward competition or cooperation or collaboration? We did a panel, and actually that was one of my other paths. I want to talk about emergence. So if you're watching and you don't know, Emergence is a conference that I host along with Jeremy Miller and Conscious Recovery conference every year in Marina Del Rey. Sharon is one of the keynote speakers this year, and our theme is Healing as a Love Story, dedicated to our wonderful Gina Tabrizi. It's the title of her book. She made her transition very recently. And we had a panel discussion, and I had some like leaders in the field, and we had this conversation about the difference between competition and collaboration and the long-term and short-term benefits. And it might be short-sighted to think, oh, there's a limited amount of, and I need to get this client. But when we start working in collaboration, magic really happens. So let's talk about emergence for a moment. I'm excited that you're one of the keynotes this year. Emergence is a very unique conference. No PowerPoints, no breakout sessions. Most of the sponsors are in the room, right around the periphery of the room. And we really do drop in and have these deeper conversations about healing. I'm excited that you're one of our keynotes. And is there anything that you want to share about that?
I'm super honored and excited to be there. I haven't personally attended, but I've heard that a lot of really important conversations take place, really transformational conversations. And when you talked earlier about people struggling, people passing away,
Yeah.
it's so important to have these conversations, not just one time a year, but all the time, and normalizing these conversations. But I'm really looking forward to the other speakers, the whole event, day by day. Yeah, and what a tribute to Gina. I didn't know her that well, but we've had several conversations. I read her book. We talked about that. And I'll talk about that more at Emergence, but I was really confused by the title, like Healing is a Love Story, because I didn't grow up thinking that at all. I didn't even understand how that title came to be. Like it sounded nice and good for her, but how? Until I started really looking at how is it a love story, and let's deconstruct it, and looking at hers and looking at mine and the parallels. And she was a martial artist and I'm a martial artist, so we had these beautiful conversations about being clinicians, being in martial arts, the relationship between the two. And it is a profound concept that healing can be a love story.
Yeah.
It definitely can be. And to fall in love with the process and not just the pain, but the resilience and coming out on the other side. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be another powerful event. And thank you
Yeah.
for putting that on.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's truly one of my favorite things that I get to do. It's a lot. It's a lot to put on a conference, and it's every year when I'm there, I feel so filled up. This is our fifth annual because we are having these deeper conversations, and what I want to talk about is the power of love to be a healer, right? Because healing is a love story. And I also would have said, what the heck are you talking about when I was earlier in my journey? But I've come to understand a couple of things about that because that title's so layered. It could mean a lot of different things. It could mean that I can fall in love with my own healing. It could mean that love is actually what heals. The power of love is so much more healing than all the other things that I used to do with my quote unquote stuff. And that is judge it, pretend like it's not there, not want you to see it, be inauthentic, put on a front. I'm sure it's shocking that I've been called entitled before. And what was underneath that sense of entitlement was this really deep belief in my own inadequacy, that there was something really fundamentally broken about me, but also unworthy. And that unworthy core false belief does show up for me sometimes. And it's like, isn't it interesting that my brilliant strategy, that's why when working with people, when I look at the presentation, it's not always true, but it's often the case that I'm going to want to at least be curious about or explore that the core false belief might be the opposite of it. Someone who is a quote unquote love addict, not a fan of that term, but in our field we use it. Quite often, the core false belief that's driving that is I'm unlovable. So instead of working on the relationships, let's work on where it originated and get down to that. And for me, healing that I'm unworthy was at such a young age. It wasn't a cognitive process. And sometimes in some recovery circles or modalities, we're like opposite action, act your way into right thinking. And I get that. And I think it's useful. And then there's this place where the deeper work is like, no, but when I was 5,
Yeah.
6, and 7, I decided I was unlovable. My brain wasn't developed. So it's not a cognitive process of healing. Love needs to come into that. And I know in our field, we don't necessarily talk about loving, but I think it's the frequency that heals.
I definitely agree. And it's fact, for me, it's one of the themes that comes up quite a lot in my work because I'm a big fan of family therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless how old the client is, family needs to be involved. That we're family of origin, chosen family, people, support, connection. So when I'm working in family therapy and there's a lot of conflict and yelling and blaming and finger pointing and that's not how this happened and this is
Mm-hmm.
how it should be. It's what are we all fighting for? We're all fighting this hard because we love someone,
Mm-hmm.
because there's trust broken, because we want that connection back. It's all from a place of love. The more we fight, the more we love. But can we love differently? Can we love in a way that's not enabling, attaching, smothering, attacking? Like, can we love differently? Like, it's really all from a place of love. When families are screaming at each other, you did this and you did that, and how could you, and blah blah. I always ask him, why are we doing all this? How did we get here? Well, we love them. Oh, okay. That's a really interesting take on that,
Yes,
but that's really where it comes from. So
that's right.
let's get back to basics. Yeah, it's not a theoretical orientation, but it could be. It is from a place of love. It is why we do what we do.
And it's interesting about a theoretical orientation because truly that is my intention for conscious recovery is to say this is a philosophical framework that explores and encourages human connection, because there are a lot of things that happen in treatment or in a therapy office. And in my experience, one of the most, if not the most important one, is connection. And true and authentic connection is about really seeing someone, and it's really about that felt sense and the energetic exchange. And I know that's what heals. I've
Yeah.
worked on with so many different teams, and the teams who value that power of connection and openness, I like to say being a cop, curious, open, and present. Those who value being a cop in that way are the ones who have profound, they have a profound effect on clients.
Yeah.
So we're moving toward the end of our conversation, believe it or not. I'm wondering if there's anything we haven't talked about under the umbrella of healing the healers that you'd like to bring into the conversation as we start to close out.
Uh, well, I have this beautiful platform. I definitely want to bring up and emphasize that in order to heal healers, in order to heal others, we have to start with us. And it can be a love story.
Yeah,
We
amazing.
have to do our own work.
Yeah, and you said something earlier that I meant to come back to, but all in divine timing, I guess. You said, it can be hard doing our work. Absolutely, but even harder is not doing our work. And I
Oh,
always want to bring that to the conversation, because
yes.
not because I'm pontificating, but because I've lived it. I
Yeah,
lived the whole decade of not wanting to do the work, and then it became so painful that I had to reach this like sort of emotional or spiritual bottom. And I don't want that for people. I want to be able to hold a space where, healing trauma, doing this deeper work is the love story, and it actually
mhm.
is the easier way. It is scary for people, especially someone who has addiction, but really all humans. Maybe we don't want to look at the darkness. We don't want to, like, how many times have people said, I just want to move on from that. That's great. And it's still alive within you. And so we might have an idea that looking is scary, which it can be. There's this amazing story in one of Pema Chodron's books. I'm bringing her up again, but there's these two young girls, and one of them is having a nightmare every single night. And in this nightmare, there's a monster chasing her. Those dreams where you're in the hallway and the doorways won't open, but there's this scary monster. And she's telling her friend, and her friend says, what does the monster look like? And she said, are you kidding me? I don't know what the monster looks like. It's too scary to see it. We all know where this story's going, right? So the next night she's in the dream and she's running down the hallway and she remembers her friend's voice. What does the monster look like? And so in the dream, she stops, she's shaking, she turns around and she looks at this hideous monster. And the next day, she tells her friend exactly in great detail how hideous the monster is. And of course, we know the dreams then went away. And so that really is this journey. I
Yeah,
I personally ran from the demons or the monsters that lived within me for so long, well into my recovery. I would love to say I put the drugs and alcohol down, and oh my gosh, ever since then, it's just been this beautiful uphill. No, that has not been my story. But when we look, it's actually much easier than not looking.
absolutely. I like to have this question of where I invite the client or the person, we don't have to look at it. Let's look 5 years down the road.
Mm,
You have those still those issues on top of whatever you've accumulated in the last 5 years. Now
mm,
let's look 10 years ahead. Like we're just gonna grow it. So let's just do the work.
I love it. And let's do it now. And
Let's do
I
it
have an
now.
exciting announcement coming up soon. I'm not quite ready to announce it, but when every year I do a meditation every year, on or around New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, which is just a made up day because we can do it anytime. Because the truth is, every day is a new moment if we want
Yep.
to use it that way or choose it that way. But this year, it did come through again that the focus is healing the healers. So I'm about to launch a pretty significant project that is going to create a space for healers to drop in and do some healing. So I'm excited to announce that. Okay, Sharon, in closing, how do people contact you? Anything you want to say as in closing, or anything else that's in your heart that you want to say to people in closing?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity and the space and the platform and the voice and the topic. And I want to thank anyone that tuned in or will be listening to this later. I'm fairly easy to contact. Sharon Volner at Facebook. I'm also the Chief Clinical Officer at La Ventana Treatment Programs. So you can't miss that on our website. And I love phone calls and I love texts and I love emails and I love connecting with people. So thank you for giving me the space to do that.
Absolutely. And I know you're speaking a lot coming up. I see that you're going to be busy and you're continuing to be busy. But also, let's take a moment. Tell us a little bit about La Ventana, in just a minute or so.
Sure. La Ventana is a privately owned treatment program in Thousand Oaks, California. It is owned by Steve Zamarripa. Um, and his story is he grew up in a very chaotic environment that really only offered brilliant strategies of addiction and mental illness and eating disorders. And he wanted to break free from that.
Mm.
And so in developing, growing his own life and going to school and becoming who he was, he realized in his businesses that, what is he giving back to the world? So he opened up La Ventana as a safe place for healing where anybody has the opportunity to receive excellent care, not necessarily overlooking the ocean or, in the beautiful Malibu, California, but in Thousand Oaks, just really good down to earth care. And we offer primary mental health and primary drug and alcohol, all levels of care. The motto is let our family guide yours. And really, if I had anyone that struggled and needed a safe place, La Ventana would be it. So that's what La Ventana is. And I want to say one more thing about the fact that I'm speaking a lot. I put myself on the mental strength tour. And that is my way to let the community know that we need to destigmatize mental health. Everyone has mental health. It's how do we carry it? And so I'm on tour and I'm speaking potentially at a town near you, all about addiction and mental health and normalizing the conversation about therapy. And so I find that to be very important. So that's my give back to the community, and I want everyone to know that it's okay. It's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to talk about it.
That's right. Beautiful. Well, thank you for our time together, and thank you everyone who's been watching. Of course, this will live on and we'll share it with people. So if you're watching in the replay, thank you for watching. And everyone, if no one has told you yet today, you came into the world as a whole, complete, and perfect being, and that is still the truth of who and what you are. And all we need to do is remember that and unlearn everything that we've been taught that's counter to that. And that's the journey. So peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you. And thank you again, Sharon, so much for being with us.
Thank you.